Eye in the Sky is a movie that I really did not expect to like so much. Of all the movies that came out in 2016, you wouldn't think that one about the military deciding whether or not to blow up a house sheltering terrorists for the sake of a single casualty would be so moving. We'd expect it to feel forced or manipulative for the sake of pandering to a specific audience. But its subject matter is handled so well that there really is nothing to complain about. Considering how straightforward the synopsis of the film is, I don't feel like it's necessary to really say more about it. But its simplicity doesn't keep it from being highly three-dimensional and believable. Firstly, the acting is really good. They all have a good range in speaking, and they portray good expressions to reflect people who would actually be going through these hard decisions. It's pretty hard to imagine how someone would be feeling having to go through this kind of stuff, but the movie finds a way to portray it in a very good way. The pacing is all done very well. It has a subtle movement that never gets distracted or lost in any drawn-out political rebuttal, and all of the necessary things to consider in this type of military operation are being covered properly. They provide subtle hints of events that will occur later on to help convey the motivations of the characters. Some scenes go by slower than others, but they're slow in an appropriate way. The way these scenes are all shown allows the viewer to better understand the weight surrounding the operation, focusing on every detail and making sure that nothing is overlooked. They went at a speed that was necessary for this subject to be better explored and commented on. The cast in this film don't really have any character outside of portraying military and political figures. You'd think that would be a detriment against this film, but this is one of those occasions where it actually plays to its advantage. The writing and the theme of the movie are portrayed in a very realistic and straightforward manner, to the point that there's no need for a deep character-focused narrative. But despite that, they're still very good characters because of how real they feel. They don't look or talk like they're part of a story or a play. They actually behave like real soldiers and politicians involved in this line of work. And the movie even puts time into getting you to connect with them as real people. They have a morning routine, they may be getting a gift for someone in their family. They may be having a conversation of how their life is like at home while they're going to their station. And the ways they communicate with each other during heated moments in this operation sounds like real dialogue instead of just pandering exposition. They give instructions to the soldiers involved in the mission or explain how they need further instructions before proceeding with the decision. And in the face of a possible casualty, they do take time to sort out a different option to reduce the risk, like pinpointing areas of impact that will be less harmful to the civilians. The prominent strength of this movie comes from its ability to portray the hardships of the military and how these types of missions are carried out. They have to work with all of this technology and be very concentrated in handling the operation with it. They have to take information up with people in different chains of command. The movie knows that this type of stuff is never simple and there's always other factors to consider. They have to make change in plans if something goes wrong, improvise with misinformation, or how they have to change the conditions of the operation if the alternative contains too many risks. Communication between different parties also plays an important role, as all of these different people have to rely on each other to make the right call. The surveillance technology is an interesting element, as we get to see just how it functions, how it's used, and what role it plays in the mission. The cinematography is also pretty good, allowing us to see the events from so many different perspectives. The music is good too. It's well orchestrated and it has a good grasp of better setting the mood and tension during certain scenes. Some of them are even addictively haunting. The track that plays during the ending is really fitting considering the tone of what happens. There's also some pretty gritty violent imagery in this film, along with some harsh news stories in the background. I'm actually thankful that the movie was willing to go through with all this. With subject matter this serious, it's important to not hold back any punches on how brutal it can get, which may be hard for several to stomach, but it's still the reality of this type of work. Inevitably, I have to talk about whether it was right or wrong for the characters to make the decisions they made during the climax. But it's also important to note that the movie shows that the decisions don't come very easily, and they do it by showing how this situation is tackled from various viewpoints. The movie's ending was meant to be debatable because in situations like this, it's never something that can be seen as black and white. Every side of the conflict is made to be understandable, and each character brings up a very strong point. Whatever happens, the bad guys will end up winning. either through propaganda or carrying out their attack. There's no way for the good guys to feel like they won because of how high the stakes are. Everyone is placed in a tough position, which is going to happen in this line of work, and the film knows how to maintain a neutral outlook on the situation. It leads to a very harsh ending that resonates a strong and very haunting tone. And after we see the aftermath of the decision that was made, we clearly see that long after the operation, they're still haunted by what they had to do. The looks on their faces say absolutely everything. How are they going to sleep tonight? How can they have a clear conscience knowing that they had to make a sacrifice in order to prevent more innocent people from dying? My favorite reaction is easily the one from Lady Powell. You'd think she'd have the least amount of empathy because she was the most urgent and willing to act. But when we see her driving home, we see a truly disturbed expression on her face. Having to carry the weight of what she allowed to happen, it's going to follow her until the day she dies, and she knows this. It's not something she can take back, and it truly sends shimmers across her mind and body. This is where my favorite part of the movie comes to play, where Alan Rickman delivers his absolute final role on screen. When you're in a war, the first thing that is lost is truth and innocence. You're constantly put in situations where someone is trying to kill you or people you wish to protect. And sometimes in order to prevent that from happening, you need to make very, very hard decisions. Decisions that may cost you a piece of what made you the person that you were before you made those decisions. It's symbolized in the very first frame, where the word truth disappears from the rest of the quote. The truth within us disappears and becomes irrelevant in a never-ending battle. And to know that that line of dialogue came from Alan Rickman just before he passed away makes it even more meaningful. There's such a strong, profound aura coming from the knowledge that such a poignant statement was the final word spoken by such a world-renowned and amazing actor before his untimely death. To this day, it's one of my favorite performances of him, and it will certainly remain that way. And the ultimate truth of the ending is that no matter what argument that the other side provides, this was still a senseless act of violence that would inspire more hate and fear. No one in that village is going to take the military's words with a grain of salt. What's truly sad is that tragedies like this could end up encouraging and provoking more extremism. It's something that unfortunately happens in real life. And it's an element that's somewhat implied during the events of the film. Eye in the Sky is that rare movie that more people should see. It's a kind of movie that manages to handle such a delicate topic in a very earnest and proper manner. It's not biased in any way, and it speaks to all sides, which is something that we really need more of. If by some chance you haven't seen it, I highly suggest that you do. Give it a watch and see what you missed out on. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.